Yes, never play to the gallery. I think, but you never learn that until much later on, I think. But never work for other people at what you do. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. And I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that. And the other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. Very much a child and product of the early 60s. It seemed to me to be terribly exciting and maybe kind of glamorous to be a commercial artist. That's what I kind of thought I wanted to do when I was 12. I thought it must be, because I was impressed with things like The Father and Dennis the Menace, who had those check jackets and the big glasses on, and the crew cut. That was a very hip look then, you know, to anybody in Britain. I don't think it was in America. But at the time I thought, that's Madison Avenue, you know, that's advertising, that's the place to be. I think the difference that most artists have, the ones that I come across, we tend to think our opinions are a lot more important than other people's in some way. That often we feel as though we have the key to something. I don't think that we do at all. I just think we dwell on it more. We tend to look at the world as some usable substance more than a non-artist would. I think for many people, just getting through life is enough. That's a big enough task, let alone having to look at the world and the universe and say, now, if I had my way,